The speaker today is from the Missouri Botanical Gardens, which is certainly one of my favorite places to go. So we want to welcome Lynn Kerkemeyer. Lynn is a graduate of St. Louis University. We found we had that in common. And for 25 years, she's been working on the national and international scene and marketing. She's worked for such firms, small things like Disney, AT&T, little things like that. But we're fortunate to have her here with us in our community, working with the Missouri Botanical Garden, and I think she's going to talk to us about their, is it 150th?
Yes.
All right. So, Lynn, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased to be here. I live over in Illinois, so I don't often get this far into Missouri. I kind of end right there at the garden most of the time. And what a beautiful drive it was. It was just gorgeous. So pleased to be with you today, and thank you very much for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit, not only about the garden's 150th anniversary, but about the garden in general. I lived here my whole life. 4 generations of my family have been from this St. Louis metropolitan area, and I'm shocked at how little I knew about the garden. I went there as a child for our field trip, and that was about all I really knew. So I'll be talking about our history and a few other things as well. As you heard, we're celebrating our 150th anniversary this year. We are the oldest public garden in the United States. There is actually one that was founded a little bit before us, but it closed for many, many years, and no other garden has been open to the public as long as we have. So we're very proud of that. We're considered to be one of the top 3 botanical institutions in the entire world. And that speaks to both our display gardens, that is the beauty of our campus in St. Louis, as well as our botanical research. And I'll talk a little bit more about that today as well. Excuse me. I like to point out this is the old entrance to the garden. As you can see, it says 1858. We actually opened on June 15th, 1859, so even back then there were problems with construction. This is our founder, Henry Shaw. He came to the United States at the ripe old age of 19 from Sheffield, England. He came here with his father. They were looking to expand their business. And of course, St. Louis at that time was the perfect place to be in the utility business, not utilities, but utensils. They had all kinds of products that they sold to our pioneers who were moving west. He retired at the age of 40, believing that he had made more money than any human being should be allowed to have. So he was actually right at 39 when he called it quits and decided to travel the world. This is what St. Louis looked like at that time in 1819 when he showed up on the shores of the city. And these are some of the items he sold to the travelers who were going west in the covered wagons and by whatever means they were traveling. Henry Shaw actually founded 11 nonprofit organizations when he retired as a part of his will. He endowed all of them, and about 20% of the garden's current budget is still being funded by that endowment. This is a classic image of the Victorian times when we opened the garden. These are our Victorian water lilies, the Victoria water lilies. They are still being grown. We take them in every year and then bring them out in the summer when it's warm enough. And they actually can hold an individual up to 125 pounds. That's how strong they are. So this lady is actually standing on that water lily entertaining the crowds. This is the Tower Grove house, which is Henry Shaw's summer home. It took him 6 hours by buggy to ride there from downtown St. Louis from his townhouse. And that's how it looked. The whole garden was prairie. It was just a wide, expansive prairie, and there was one grove of sassafras trees. And that's what the house is overlooking, and that's how that whole area became known as Tower Grove. And this is what the house looks like today. In the back, there's a red brick building over on the right, and that is our current administration building. But that was his townhome that was in downtown St. Louis. That was it. and on 7th and Locust. And in his will, he demanded that the house be brought brick by brick and rebuilt on his property and the garden. The garden is 79 acres altogether. So I'll back up a minute. There it is. It was done, and over the years it was added on too, and so it's quite a bit larger now. One of the little background stories that we find very interesting is that in 1858, a year before the garden opened to the public, a woman by the name of Effie Carstang sued Henry Shaw for breach of promise. He had given her a piano, and in those days, that was she considered that an engagement. He was a bachelor his whole life. So she sued him for breach of promise, and she actually won $100,000. It was later overturned on appeal. So had she won, I don't think the garden would be in existence today. This is the old entrance to the garden, which was torn down and rebuilt. Some of you may know the Spink Pavilion. This is part of the Spink Pavilion as it was rebuilt a little bit further down. And this is the original layout that Henry had drawn up for the garden. This is one of our original greenhouse conservatories. As you can see, it's quite large, but it had to be torn down in 1913 due to disrepair. This is Henry Shaw's original mausoleum. He was going to be buried on the grounds. In fact, he is buried on the grounds, and it was made out of Missouri limestone. And he started thinking about it, and he thought, might not stand the test of time, so he had another one built. Anyway, we'll get to that. I'll show you the other one that was built. But the first one, right now it houses our beautiful sculpture that is called Victory of Science Over Ignorance by Carlo Niccoli. And the mausoleum was designed by George Barnett, a great architect. Anyway, here's Henry. This is something that was very common during the Victorian era. This is a photograph of him actually lying in repose for his sarcophagus. He was having a marble image of himself done to go over the top of his sarcophagus. It was actually carved by Ferdinand von Miller of Bavaria, and I just find that fascinating from that time. This is the granite mausoleum. This is the one that's in our mausoleum garden right now. It has beautiful stained glass in it that has brilliant colors. It's been very studied because of the beautiful colors in the stained glass. And the glass is a very high quality. And so the granite has held up very well, and so is the limestone. So we have two of them. And then this is the sarcophagus and the final image that Henry posed for. In the foreground, you'll see his longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Trelease, who's in mourning there. Henry died at the age of 89 in 1889, so he's quite old. He died of malaria. And in fact, he was quite ill, and the New York Times carried a story about his impending death. So his reputation was actually worldwide, even way back then in the 1880s. So this is an image of Henry Shaw laying in state in our museum building. This was our first scientific building on the garden grounds, and it's an absolutely stunning building. It's all covered with murals. You can see this balcony around the top there. It is closed to the public because it is in disrepair, and it's not ADA accessible, and so it's not open to the public, which is a real shame. I was so hoping for 150th anniversary that we would be able to bring it forward for people to see, but not so. I wanted to move directly into the science aspect of the garden because that's something that is really little known, I think, in the general public about the Missouri Botanical Garden. We have these beautiful display gardens that are so treasured here in the St. Louis area, and actually we have visitors from all over the world who come to us. But really, those gardens are the gild on the lily. The real work that the Missouri Botanical Garden is involved in is scientific research around the world. We have more than 40 PhD scientists working in 36 countries around the world. And so a large part of what we do is actually documenting all of the plant life on the face of the earth, basically. We're involved in a worldwide project called the Encyclopedia of Life, and the Missouri Botanical Garden and the New York Botanic Garden are in charge of the plant life aspect of that. And as part of that process, we are documenting the plants, the growing conditions of those plants and how they're being affected throughout history. We have samples that have been collected by Darwin that are in our library, in our herbarium. This is kind of what an herbarium looks like. And I'll talk a little bit about what this research means out in the field. The gentleman on your left is Tom Croat. He is in his 70s. He just collected his 100,000th specimen, which became our garden's 6 millionth specimen in our herbarium. And that's the grand specimen that he found. Tom's in his 70s, and he's still out in the wild collecting. There are only 4 botanists ever in history to collect 100,000 plant samples. And this is a sample, an example of what it's like to be collecting in the wild. We're really proud of the work Tom has done in the area of research, as well as our herbarium, which, as I said, is 6 million. We are the largest herbarium in the Western Hemisphere and the 4th largest in the world. One of the best things about the work that we do in conservation and scientific research is to work with indigenous peoples to help them understand and reap the benefit of their plant life, so that they're not clear cutting and farming and ruining the soil, and we then lose many precious plants that are in the rainforest and have not been documented. So a couple of the projects that we're involved in, well, one of them is the Blessing Basket Project. Is anybody familiar with that? It's a wonderful nonprofit organization that was founded by a woman from Edwardsville, Illinois, that's a whole story in itself, and I won't go into it because then we'll be here another half hour. But she was having a difficult time in her life and was putting kindnesses that people gave her into a basket. She called it her blessing basket. And she decided to try to bless other women around the world who are in difficult situations. And so she started this, and we carry them at the garden. This is one that the Missouri Botanical Garden is involved with because we work with our local people in Madagascar. This is made out of plant materials from Madagascar. They're paid a prosperity wage, and they're able to live and support their families by weaving these baskets and save the rainforest. And so the Blessing Basket Project has actually allowed people in many countries there's I think 4 or 5 countries that they are in right now, to buy their children out of slavery, to buy the women out of prostitution and have a way to have a living. So it's a really wonderful project. This is a plant that you might all recognize as common vinca, but this is one of the important aspects of the research that we do. This is the cure for childhood leukemia. It was discovered in Madagascar. It's the rosy periwinkle, and the story goes that the local doctor in Madagascar was telling the scientists who were there collecting plants that this had healing properties. So they brought it back to the States and they said, no, we can't find anything. And he said, study it again. And when they did, the drug vinblastine and vincristine was able to be produced from the rosy periwinkle plant. And that was in the early 80s. I can't remember the pharmaceutical company right now that did it. But prior to the discovery of this plant, 80% of the children with leukemia died That's now down to about 20% because of this plant. So that is the serious work that the garden does day in and day out all around the world. And I'll go on now to the pretty stuff. Dr. Peter Raven is our director. He's been our director for over 33 years. He's a dynamo. I cannot imagine someone that I could not be prouder to work for. He's been given every national award. He's been given the National Merit of Science. Time magazine named him a hero for the planet. The Vatican has given him their highest scientific award. The country of Vietnam, the country of China, the Royal Botanic Garden, the Royal Scientific Academy, if I'm getting that right. He's one of the few people outside of the United Kingdom that has ever been given their highest scientific award. He's just a brilliant man, discovered his first plant at the age of 14, and is really the genius behind our current research program, as well as the development of the garden. It was under his watch over the last 30 years that the garden has grown, and he has actually brought to life our master plan. This is one of our newest gardens. It opened in 2006. It's the Bakewell Ottoman Garden. It's the first of its kind in the United States, and it's modeled after the Gardens of Paradise that were very popular in the 17th century in what is now Turkey. So we are on the same latitude as the Turkey, so we can grow a lot of the same plants here that they can. So that was one of the reasons why we did this garden. Our irises are famous and beautiful, and we actually could not run the garden without our volunteer corps. We have I'm going to get the number wrong, over 14,000 volunteers. I mean, it's an unbelievable number of volunteers. We have one woman who managed that up until this year. Now there's 2 people. And they've donated over 100,000 hours to the garden. And so it's volunteers and flower societies that actually do many of the gardens and make sure they're so beautiful. This is the Victorian district, and in honor of our 150th, some very long-time donors of the garden just redid that entire area. We have new pincushion gardens, and it's been refurbished. It's absolutely beautiful. This is our Japanese garden, Seiwayan, which is the garden of pure, clear harmony and peace. And I didn't know anything about Japanese gardens. You know, I strolled through, and I thought, oh, it's lovely. But I didn't understand the long-term process that goes into planting a Japanese garden and the planning. It may take an entire year to put one plant in the ground, because the designer will look at how that particular plant relates with all the other plants around it, the color, the foliage, how it casts a shadow at different elements, different times of the year, different times of the day. So it's very structured in the approach of designing a Japanese garden, and all of that goes into evoking a certain feeling to the person who walks through it. And so it definitely will give you a sense of peace as you spend time in that garden. It's the largest and most authentic Japanese garden in North America. It's about 14 acres. There are 2 ponds in it, a lake and a pond, actually. This is the zigzag bridge. And this is just a lovely pathway with our Zen. There's a name for that, and I apologize, I don't know. But does anybody know about the rocks? It's to evoke water, and they do certain paths in it. And we have beautiful, over 27 varieties of Japanese maples in the Japanese garden. And here's our drum bridge. Snow is considered a flower in the Japanese garden. And I love the garden that winter. If you've never been during the winter, take a chance and come on down. Right now, our Linnaean house is open, and our rare camellias are just starting to bloom. Give it 2 more weeks, and they'll be spectacular. And our orchid show is going on. But in the winter, you really get to see the texture of the bark and the architecture of the trees in a way that you don't get to see in its full glory in the summer. Here's our George Washington Carver Garden. We put this in 2005 as a tribute to this wonderful scientist. He was born into slavery and was sold away from his mother at the age of 8. And yet his agriculture contributions are unparalleled in history. This is a contemplative garden, and there are quotes that line the entrance into the garden. And one of my favorites from Mr. Carver is, "No individual has any right to come into the world and go out of it without leaving behind him a distinct and legitimate reason for having passed through it." So it's a beautiful garden that we really treasure. Here's our boxwood garden. Our Kemper Center for Home Gardening. This is unique in the whole United States. There are 23 residential-sized gardens around the Kemper Center, and inside is a library and a resource center. We have a plant doctor. The public is welcome to come in, bring their sick plants. We'll try to help you out. Our master gardeners operate out of this building. It's a wonderful resource for anyone who's likes to garden and wants to learn more. Our Chinese garden, which is also very authentic, it's a scholar's garden. The round shape is a traditional entrance and the circular symbol of perfection. And our Moorish garden that's in the Temperate House, which is a lovely place to go in the winter as well. It's on the north side of the climatron. In 2006, we opened our children's garden, and it's really starting to come into its own. It was quite jarring at first. I'll be the first one to admit a lot of our longtime garden lovers really did not like it at all. They were very upset about it. But it's so different from our very pristine garden and the very structured beds and display gardens that we have. And then we have this Missouri adventure that has all 4 ecosystems for the state of Missouri plopped down there in the garden. But I have to tell you, the children love it. And that's really, we're in competition with so many other venues around that children have access to, ball games and Nintendo and all of those things. So we wanted to have something that families would feel comfortable bringing their children to the garden. And they really have. We've seen a huge increase in the number of families that come. And our proudest moment was when there was a little boy just screaming, "No, I don't want to go to the zoo. I want to stay here." So that was like worth the whole thing. So the climatron, of course, is one of our iconic symbols, our rainforest under the Buckminster Fuller dome, geodesic dome. It actually turns 50 next year, so we're planning a celebration for that as well. In front is the sculpture, the Carl Millis sculptures of the three angel musicians. He was a Swedish-American sculptor, which leads me to talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing in the last 3 years with art exhibits. So in 2006, we had the Chihuly exhibit, which was wonderful. It really helped the garden financially to keep us afloat. So we really enjoyed that a lot. Then last year we brought back the Chipungu artists. We actually were the first garden to bring these artists to the United States back in 2001. That's when I first started working for the garden. And Dr. Raven had seen their work in South Africa, and he was the person who made it happen to bring these Zimbabwe artists to St. Louis originally. And then we brought them back for a much smaller exhibit last year. And then this past year, we had the work of Niki de Saint-Phal, who was a Franco-American artist, which was quite different, and people loved it, despite a few that hated it. But that's what art's all about, it evokes strong feelings. So for our 150th, which we're in the middle of, we're just starting right now. I don't know if anybody saw it, but Dr. Raven and the garden was featured in the Rose Bowl Parade. The City of St. Louis float celebrated both the Clydesdales and the Missouri Botanical Garden, although it didn't get a lot of play on national television. We were really proud of it. And one of the key features that we're going to have this year is a working floral clock. It's 20 by 20. We're just starting the construction of it now. And there hasn't been one in St. Louis since the World's Fair. And people have been clamoring for it ever since. We get calls every year asking us to do a floral clock. So we're doing it this year. It's quite an endeavor. Our horticulturists will have to have special scaffolding built that they can lay on their bellies to do the weeding and planting. It'll be changed out 3 times a year. And absolutely everything on here is planted. The arms, the hands, the numerals, everything. We also usually have between about 90,000 bulbs in bloom throughout the spring and summer. This year we'll have 150,000. So it's going to be a spectacular show if the weather holds for us. I also want to talk about our Earthway Center. That's going to be part of our 150th celebration as well. Many of you may or may not know that we have a division that has been dedicated for 25 years to sustainable living. So this is our Earthways Center, which is actually in Grandel, on Grandel Square. It's an old Victorian home that has been refurbished and runs on solar power, and it has all kinds of sustainable products in it. And so in 2009, because we're all much more aware now with the gas last year and so forth of living a sustainable life, we'll be bringing elements of that home and other products will be in our Brookings Interpretive Center, which if you were there for the Chihuly exhibit, it's where the shop was behind the Climatron. We're going to be having a fun display there with some energy bikes that you can learn how to make your own energy. Well, not really, but riding a bike, you can learn about the production of energy. It'll be our Earthways Living the Green Life in Brookings. And we'll also be hosting nighttime events. We've been doing that on Thursday evenings. The Whitaker Music Series, there's a wonderful free concert every Wednesday night at the garden. It's the only time you're allowed to bring alcohol and food into the garden. Those are free every Wednesday. We're getting between 6,000 and 10,000 people every Wednesday night, June, July, and the first 2 weeks of August. But we also do events on Thursday nights that you do pay to come to, but it's much less of a crowd. You can't bring food and drink in, but we have family-style activities. This year we're going to bring in artists who are going to be doing chalk street art. And so they'll be doing 3-dimensional art every Thursday. Balloon artists, fire jugglers, the children's garden will be open for free. So we'll be doing fun events on Thursday night, Memorial Day through Labor Day. And so that's the end of my presentation. We'd love to see you come and visit us. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them in the short time we have left. Yes, sir.
Are you aware that the people aware here that Dr. Peter Rose has a retreat out here in Jefferson County?
His home, his new home, are you talking the Shaw's the Nature Reserve?
No,
His home, yes. He's just purchased some property. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it's where he'll retire to. And we do have a nature preserve in Gray Summit that we had to move all of our plants to when the coal was threatening the plant life. I can't remember if it was the 30s or 50s, something like that, but that's a beautiful place, very natural too. Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for the experts on the other end of the telephone when you're really up the tree, and they straighten you out.
Oh, they work really hard at it too. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate your time, and it was great to be with you today.